Today is Sunday, June 4th, 2017. This is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, and I am Larry H. Russell. We already know it was a successful season, so how about putting into words, or I don't want to say give it a number on a 1 to 10 scale, because it's got to be a 10.
It was an 11. It was everything that a Celtics fan could have asked for, and probably a little bit more. You know, I even go back to this. I've been saying this a lot since the season ended, but even from a reporter standpoint, this team was so enjoyable to be around and so much fun to watch, kind of get to where they got to, that I enjoyed it more than any of the Big Three era teams.
I was just ready to say favorite season since.
Yeah, I would say maybe favorite season since. You know, really my first season on the beat was 2010, and that was crazy just because I didn't know it was going to go to the finals and be all that and be Game 7 and Perk and all that. So it's hard to say that it was up to that level, but probably since then it was the most fun. I have a soft spot for 2012. You know, that was just a crazy season, and I mean, you think back, and they're one win away from the NBA.
But the regular seasons then were terrible. This regular season was great.
And you're exactly right there, and that's what it boils down to, is from beginning to end, and to have that central figure of Isaiah Thomas sort of just be mesmerizing from the moment he showed up. Like I keep going back, like when we were putting together the whole what an amazing year for Isaiah, I kept going back. I was like, well, we got to go back to August because he was at that Iverson thing, and that Iverson thing was awesome when he wanted to take his game to the next level. And then you're like, well, then July when he was on the recruiting trips, it was just always something about Isaiah and the way he elevated his game and ultimately followed through on everything that we thought was crazy when he said it in October. And so I just really, really enjoyed this season. I really enjoyed being around this team. I thought it was great that, you know, even in the playoffs, just to rally in that first round, to win a Game 7 in round 2, you know, and to get that Game 3 in Cleveland in the conference finals. I mean, just what more could anyone ask for? Get the number 1 pick along the way. It's just remarkable. I don't think Celtics fans, it would be greedy to have asked for anything more from that year.
We do need to go back in a chronological order in this season in review on episode 212 of Celtics Beat, being brought to you today by ZipRecruiter and Casper. Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/Celtic. It's just Celtic now, not Celtics. And enter promo code Celtic. All right, screw it. No, you know what? Real quick, I want to get this out. Give me your top 3 favorite Celtics seasons of all the time you've been a fan, and it's okay to openly admit as a journalist that you're still a fan like myself.
Yeah, of course.
Give me your 3 favorite seasons really quick.
So I would say 07-08, just because my friends bought season tickets that year on a whim before the year. They thought we were going to get Odin or Durant, and then they didn't. And then one of my friends,
there. I got you.
One of my friends moved across the country, and it ended up so we had an extra ticket. And so I probably went to, I won't say, it was probably 20, 25 of the home games that year. And I just started back at Boston.com at that point, and you know the video and audio age was kind of ushering its way in, and I was doing a lot of Patriots. And by the end of that season, I said, you know what, this has been really fun. This has been one of the more mesmerizing seasons. Something big is probably going to happen this postseason. Let's jump on it. And so I got to put on the reporter hat and do the reporter thing through the end of that season. And man, like, it was my first real big trip away for the LA in the finals. That one would be hard to top, both personally and professionally. You know, before that, what was it, 02? The Nets?
To the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, that's my number 2.
I really enjoyed that one. And then I don't know if I can, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something here. Like,
I forgot you bandwagoned it right around that.
Exactly.
You skipped the 90s, unlike myself, who tortured myself for all those years.
Well, here's the thing.
I got a book out of it, though.
And that's all that matters, right? Again, it's selfishly you balance that professional and personal life. I'll always have a soft spot for those late 80s and early 90s because that's when my dad would sit there and watch games with me and tell me how great Gorman and Heinsohn were, and I grew an appreciation for the Celtics then. But, you know, again, personally, professionally, I will carry this season near and dear. I don't know if it's number one. I don't know if it'll get up there with the 07, 08 or that 01, 02 team, but it's pretty close.
I'll go with number 4, if not number 5, just quickly on a whim. I've always admitted this one for me. Number 1 is 91. That was the first year I followed the team. And then 2002, 2008, and then actually, yeah, you know what? I'll go 08. Yeah, I'll probably get some grief putting 08 number 3, even though it's talk about a storybook season. And then this is probably a distant fourth. Anyways, we got to get right down to business. We're like a good 5, 6, 7 minutes into this quote-unquote season in review show, and here it is. It just turned down to one of those classic, trips down nostalgia lane here with me and you. That's not the first time we ever do that. We only have so much time
not at all.
on this broadcast. So, easiest way to do this, of course, chronological order. And the season in review doesn't start on October, 27th, 28th, whatever the first game of the year was. 26th, I believe this date was. It starts when you ask all those little people in the Boston media to go forth with summer forecasts at the end of July. So, I know. I'll just get this out of the way. You're gonna do a little Tyler Zeller cheap shot low blow. However,
no, I even said I am not going to bust his chops.
However, no one's gonna remember that. Number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference Finals. Who got that one? Raise your hand. I did. I said 60 wins as sort of a hot
little
take
aggressive.
Thing. As a hot take thing, get it out there on Twitter. Larry H. Russell, 60 wins. In reality, it was 57. Okay, I was a -4 on that one. But the number 1 seed, I did say lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. I would say my big whiff, though, was defensively. This is sort of what we've all forgot, is the kind of step back that the team took defensively. I guess we can get into that later or whenever you want to. But give me your summer forecast and how it looked.
So I don't have the exact numbers here, but I think I was pretty close on the wins. I want to say I had
the important stuff. Don't say, well, I said Kelly Olynyk was going to start. I mean, I missed it. And it was no, we don't care.
No. I was pretty close on the wins. I think I was 1 or 2 wins off. I want to say I had them getting to the second round of the playoffs with a chance of reaching the finals. So I wasn't like I wasn't on point with much of my forecast. But I agree. Like the one thing that sticks with me as I was kind of thumbing through the archives is one, I can't believe how we sat there and said, should they cut Gerald Green? Because, heaven forbid we give up on R.J. Hunter or James Young. And you look back and you see Gerald Green emerge, and I'm slapping my head. And the defense thing, oh my God, how wrong
that's
been?
The one. That was the one real letdown of the year, I thought, because I thought it was a given that the team would come in top 5 defensively, and if not challenge for number 1, and that was the one real letdown of the season.
So
why was it a letdown? No, what are your thoughts on this? I'm the host on this show. This is my show, Chris. What are your thoughts on this?
So it's weird, right? Because the offense was so good, it clearly negated the fact that the defense slipped as much as it did. And I do think there's something to it. Brad, kept going back to it, and he wasn't wrong, was that if you take away the first 12, 13 games of the year, that awful loss to the Nuggets, that awful loss to the Wizards.
Yep, we were going to get into that.
They dug themselves a really big hole to get out of. And I think if you took that away, they'd probably be, flirting with the top 10.
Yeah, but it was never elite.
No, exactly.
It was supposed to be an absolute assumption that it was an elite defense, and it never was. And it never really was. There was only stress or sorry to interrupt you. That's what I do. There was only, I would say, the one game I can reference was the fourth quarter of that Rockets home win, which was late January, and that was, I think they were in the midst. I think that was the first win of a 7-game winning streak that they had after they lost to Washington. In a Marcus Smart, he had a little issue, and then they came back the next night and they locked Houston down defensively. So outside of a little stretch that I saw in the fourth quarter against Houston, I never saw that just the defense really be what it was at various points of the year last year and even late in 15 as well.
I guess the thing I'm left wondering is ultimately, was that an issue? I mean, as much as it was
I know it probably wasn't.
Or it's it really didn't impact.
Were they going to beat Cleveland?
Yeah, no, even if they had the number 1 defense in the regular season, did we somehow expect that was going to keep them from keeping Cleveland under 120 in the postseason? I don't think so. I think moving forward, you hope that they find a way to get back to a more consistent defense, maybe take some of the pressure off that offense in general. But looking back, I don't think we could have predicted the offense was going to explode quite the way it did. So it kind of washed out the fact that the defense regressed as much as it did.
Real quick, give me a very quick theory and a very simple. I know you really can't dive into this too far with the time that we have as to why the defense took the step back that it did. Was it largely because the big man was constantly having to shadow Isaiah's man, and then of course they didn't have that rim protection as is to begin with? Is that like the most simplistic observation you could possibly give in in
sure,
20 seconds or less?
But I think the other thing is the offense was so good they just sort of said like, screw it. Like, we don't have to play defense as good as we did because we're putting up 100-plus points a night. And I know that's like how does that happen over the course of an entire year? But I do think it just the offense came so easy at times. You think about the year before, they had to work so hard on every possession, just to because they knew they weren't going to score consistently. Well, I think it just naturally they loosened up a bit when they realized that Isaiah could go down there and create offense every time, and for whatever reason, they just never dug in to the level they were capable of.
I think there's actually something a lot to that. I really do. To move right along, though, something that we did expect to be an issue this year, and it certainly was, and it played out in the second game of the season, and I can recall...
Fatal flaw!
I can recall you were on our October 30th show against Charlotte, which was a win on that Saturday. They played Charlotte. Me and you got up at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever it was, to record that show. And he said, geez, why didn't the Hornets send the guys to the glass the way Chicago did? Rebounding certainly was an issue. It was an issue in that Bulls game, the second game of the year. You referenced the Nuggets and the Wizards blowout. I remember the game against the Wizards down there. They just got out-rebounded by 150 or whatever it was. How would you say that rebounding, sort of impacted the season?
Yeah, it was always present, and it certainly got magnified whenever they went on those losing streaks. And, even you think back to the start of the playoffs and Robin Lopez going nuts on the glass, and everyone's like, see, we knew this would be an issue. But again, it's almost like the defense to me, or maybe not. Maybe in this terms it is I didn't have high expectations for the rebounding. We kind of knew it was going to be an issue. And they went through spurts where they did it well, or well-ish as for what they are. But we knew they were the shortest team in the league. It was going to constantly be an issue. I thought they managed it about as well as they could have. Does that mean that I don't think they should go out and find some, import Zizic and get some rebounding this summer? No, absolutely not. They need to get better at it. They must go out and fix this issue. They can't let it linger. Because, again, I think that goes back to why the defense was so bad at times, too. You can't play great defense for 24 seconds and then allow a tip in and not have it weigh on you like, wow, I can't go down there and work really hard for 24 seconds just to give up a second chance basket. I think that frustrated them at times and was the root of their troubles for a large portion of their losses. But again, all things considered, I don't know if we sat there in October and we said, is this their fatal flaw? Will this be the reason they don't achieve their goals? And it wasn't. They got as far as we could have possibly imagined, and I don't think rebounding was the difference in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I don't know if this is this is actually this is anecdotal, and it was just sort of a trend that I did notice in that whenever they did get blitzed on the glass one night, like we'll use say the Cleveland game, there were certain games whenever they got blitzed on the glass one night, say Chicago at the beginning of the year. There was another game, too, right before they played Washington towards the end of the season at home. They ended up coming back and just out-rebounding Washington by at least 10 or even more, I believe, in that late March home win, I want to say it was, which is a real crucial game. It ended up being for home court advantage in the playoffs. Am I reiterating our point by saying that whenever It's
right. And I think it's all of their flaws. Whenever they wanted to do it, they figured out a way to do it. And that's a good sign, like a team that kind of is able to know they have a weakness, to have a bad night, but then kind of bounce back when they needed to. Yeah, I agree. I just think that's a good sign. That's a good sign of coaching too, right? That Brad would sit there and say, hey, listen, you got annihilated by the Bulls the other night on the glass. Here's what we're going to do to fix it, even though we still haven't grown since the start of the year.
I was going to say, is any of this coaching, because none of the players outside of Marcus Smart on the team really put a concerted effort into boxing players out.
It has to be it has to be good coaching, right? Like the fact that they fixed it. I don't know how. I look at it as if Brad had the necessary parts, I'd like to think they'd be a better rebounding team. Do I think that there were times where, I'm not saying like a coach can't mask it for the entire season, but I thought, especially once we got into the playoffs, like, and we'll get to this probably, but the chess match he had with Hoiberg and Brooks, like, pretty clear. He made all the right choices and made all the right moves to put his team in position to win those series.
Unequivocally, the worst the team played during the season was right after Isaiah Thomas got hurt. They blew out the Magic one game. I want to say it was on Larry Bird's birthday, and then there was that. Oh, geez, could they be better without Isaiah Thomas? And,
I love that week, by the way.
Yeah, that didn't really turn out so well. They ended up losing to a bunch of good teams. Give me a weird, contrived storyline for the season. I'm sort of setting you up because I thought I kind of called you out on one earlier in the year when you said, "Oh, geez, they're not beating any good teams in close games," and I was like, "Chris, they've played like 3 good teams in close games thus far. Why freak out with?" It's almost like you guys are trying. You guys, I'm dumping you in there with the beat team, where there's this rush to find a storyline that you called first, and I got it. I tweeted it before you guys did. And give me a weird, contrived storyline or hot take before the year that just totally, blew up in its face. Could it be not good against good teams in close games? Better without Isaiah's, obviously.
That one. There's no way because that came back to life in the playoffs, like when they won that game 3, which was hilarious. I think a lot of especially during the year, the hubbub about the starting lineup, like people wanted Amir out of there so badly at times, and even into the playoffs. But there was always this. Well, when they have their starting lineup, they've never lost a playoff series. It was almost like that line because they were so injured. But I don't know. There was never really anything. I'm trying to think of like individual players. It was hard. Everyone was so injured for stretches that they all got that treatment. That we had that stretch in January where we're like, well, how valuable is Avery Bradley really if he can't stay on the court? And then the Crowder going off about Hayward. That was probably nothing contrived about that, but it was just a weird thing in general. I don't know. I don't know if we had many contrived storylines. And I will go to bat for myself here. I do believe we're going to get into signature wins, but so what would you say was their first signature win?
At Golden State.
And when was that?
That was in like March, right? I mean, that was the signature. I don't know if that's my
March 8th.
My first signature win, but that's just the win that jumps out from the season. Obviously, they had some very good wins. I mean, I want to say when they beat the Rockets in January on the back-to-back after losing that Wizards game after Marcus. That's a point in the year where that season really could have come unglued to an extent. They really were not playing all that well. I believe they had just lost some really bad home games to the Knicks and the
Portland
Blazers.
And the Knicks, yeah.
They lost those, and then they went down to Washington. They got beat up pretty good. Marcus Smart had the issue down there. And they came right back and played a Rockets team on a back-to-back, and like I said, I talked about earlier in the show, they locked them down. I would say that's... Yeah, you know what? With the kind of season that Houston had, you can call that, a signature win. It was at home, it was on a back-to-back, and it was really what I thought propelled the team. They really took off after that game. But the signature win was Golden State.
Sure. And I was going to say, because I was wondering if you're going to throw that Toronto game there in early February, where they didn't have DeRozan wasn't on the court, and so people were hesitant to call it a signature win. But
February 1st, yeah, that was a good game too. Great crowd.
They hadn't beaten Toronto to that point, but it plays into what you said. That was the stretch there where they beat. They started it with that Houston win, and they were on fire. They really had the chance to go into the All-Star break on like a 10-game winning streak or whatever.
They let that one go against the Bulls, the Jimmy Butler call.
And they also, I think they had a hiccup against Sacramento in early. But all things considered, they were really rolling at that point. And I would agree. That was the first time I think I started to step back from the non-signature win ledge. And then when was it? The Cleveland game, March 1st, where was that the Avery Bradley defense at the end there? Yeah. So that's when I think that was the first time I think I said, okay, this team has the potential to do something. They showed me something by stepping up on that game, and it was before all the hype and all the number one seed, and it was just a good early March game where they got a chance to find out where they were, and Avery to lock down KYRIE there at the end. That was the first time I said, you know what, maybe they can get to the second round, and depending on who it is, if it's not Toronto. And I don't know, maybe
there was that big anybody but Toronto thing in there for the longest time.
Maybe that was the best. Maybe that was the most contrived storyline, because I don't know if how it would have played out differently.
The Lowry injury certainly changed the scope.
Exactly. I don't know if you can certainly make the case that by the end of the year the Wizards were maybe a tougher opponent in that round, but you just never know how that would have played out.
So was it really that long at the point of the year where you really felt that it began to click? Because for me, when I thought they came out of that crazy December schedule, pretty much well above water there, I mean, I wouldn't call this a signature win, but when Isaiah went nuts in the fourth quarter and overtime down in Memphis right before Christmas, they were down 17 points, and that was a real solid road win against a Memphis team that was playing really well at the time. That game, that's when I felt like it was at least starting to click, and that's when I felt, okay, this is at least going to be a second round team.
Yeah, I think what it was is that, there was that point, so they were 13-12 in mid-December, coming off that San Antonio loss on the road where they went 0-2 against Oklahoma City and San Antonio. And I think we're all sort of
without Isaiah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're still all sitting there saying, well, what is this? Like, this is supposed to be a team that was going to compete for a top spot. What do they have here? And I think what that late December stretch to me will always be just that was Isaiah being like, here I am. Like, I'm ready to take my game to the next level. Had that ridiculous game at home against the Heat where he scores 29 in the fourth quarter in OT.
52. There was no overtime in that game, right?
Was there no overtime?
No.
Yeah, that's right. It was just the fourth quarter. 29 points in the fourth quarter, right? Like, whatever it was absurd. It was like, and that was the same deal. Like they'd been in Cleveland the night before and lost. They had no energy. They came home for whatever reason. That the second night of back-to-backs, they had evidently a good amount of signature wins those nights, which isn't surprising. They've done that in the Brad Stevens era. But that late December, I was like, all right, wow, Isaiah is gone to another level. This team is going to be pretty interesting. But you think about it, that one game over 500 in mid-December, and then you look up, and by the second week of January, they were 11 games over 500, and that's when you started to think, okay, they're going to be in the mix for a top spot, but how will it play out? But honestly, I really don't think I sat there thinking, maybe because of the injuries, maybe because, again, fair or not, they
had a brutal December schedule. We forget about that.
Oh.
The Celtics may be out, but it's still the playoff season, with the finals set to begin Thursday, and having the right players on the court, such as LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant, has proven to key the success for the Warriors and Cavs. That sharp outside shooter and power rebounder can be the difference between winning and losing, and business isn't any different. Your company needs the right people to be the best. So where do you go to find the top talent? You can't find the best candidates by posting your job on just one site. You need to post on all the top job sites, and now you can with ZipRecruiter. At ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100-plus job sites with one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your position. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other top job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses on all sizes nationwide. And right now, Celtics Beat listeners can start forming their own winning team on ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. That is ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. Try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. Next, let's talk about Casper. Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the cost. They are revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers and showrooms and passing that savings directly to the consumer. Casper is made of supportive memory foam for a sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. Plus, its breathable design sleeps cool to help you regulate your temperature throughout the night. And you can buy it easily online and completely risk-free, because Casper understands the importance of truly trying out a mattress that in all reality you spend a third of your life on. Casper offers free delivery and painless returns within a 100-day period. Wow, 100 days, so you don't have to lie down in a showroom. Studies have now proven lying on a bed in a showroom has no correlation to whether it is the right bed for you. And get this, you can save an additional $50 as one of our audience members by going to Casper.com/Celtic and entering the promo code Celtic. That is Casper.com/Celtic and promo code Celtic. Free shipping applies to U.S. and Canada customers only. Terms and conditions apply. So these slow starts are actually now a bit of a trend for the last 2-3 years. I can say the last 3 years, but we really didn't count 3 years ago when they weren't very good. Is that just the continued experimentation of Brad Stevens every year with these lineups?
I don't know, because I don't think he experimented a whole lot this year. No, he definitely experimented.
No, I thought he did. I thought he did for a very long time.
I mean, I think he wanted to play the same lineups, but they were just not healthy. And so that was part of the struggle there at the start. Just like you said, this was the first year where the schedule really conspired against them at the start of the season. Because and I think we knew that. So you didn't want to get too down on them based on that, where they were in mid-December. And you felt like if they could make some hay there in early January, that maybe they could be what we thought they would be. But yeah, I do think it was maybe a little bit of experimentation, but I don't know. Like, I felt he was pretty locked in on his roster this year. I do remember after that, what game was it? There was definitely a game on the road where I remember wondering in maybe January or February where I asked him, I'm like, did you play this guy just because you're still searching? And he was like adamant. He was like, no, it was more like, this is just what we had to go with. And I feel like they locked in pretty early on the guys. Now, you can always make the case that, he probably should have crunched down a little sooner, but, again, all things considered, it worked out pretty well.
I was surprised that he did that during the year, because I thought that was the case last year and that he would have the benefit, knowing that mostly, because there was a big turnover prior to last year, wasn't so much coming into this year outside of Horford, which, of course, the adverb that we used to describe him, quote-unquote, fitting in was seamlessly, but outside of him, he was the only guy that they had to work in, so I was surprised that there was so much of that. Of course, that there were just so many injuries with Horford, with Isaiah at the point of the year. And then, boom. What else am I missing in terms of
that was another contrived storyline. Al just isn't.
No, don't. Okay. I thought you were going to talk about the baby thing, and I was like, that you are not allowed to bring that up on this show. Speaking of contrived storylines.
Well, I mean, you aren't wrong, but
hey,
no, but even I think we were right before the playoffs, and Al was like, I'm just still getting more comfortable. It's like, dude, you just played 90 games with the team. I think you're pretty comfortable. And he showed it in the playoffs. Now, I can't say that unequivocally there was nothing to it. I just think we tended to make a bigger deal he's still figuring out how to run these pick and rolls. No, he definitely is someone who needs that comfort level, and he certainly helps to have that time with the team, and I'm curious to see how that blossoms moving forward. But I think I laughed when we were still writing that storyline in April.
Okay, so you brought up the playoffs, of course, get to that. I just want to get one quick question in, Chris, before the playoffs. I know what your mindset was, and this is not going to be – there's going to be 10 gazillion off-season shows. I got one. I would like to save it a little bit for the queue. But you'll almost assuredly tie it into this. What was your mindset after the trade deadline at whatever Thursday that was at 3:09 p.m. Eastern Time? How did you feel?
I don't want to make it sound like some victory lap, but I just assumed nothing was going to happen. Now, I thought they did exactly what we thought they'd do. They shot for the moon and realized that the price tags were way too expensive for Paul George and Jimmy Butler, and maybe that somehow took them away from the smaller fish in terms of they didn't want to do anything that would muddy up the summer, or that could have thrown one of those deals into jeopardy had they somehow come to life. But I just sort of figured that they would emerge on the other side looking a lot like they did, and I thought the whole when did people start? When Toronto started making a little bit of a run there late in the season, and Tucker started to look really comfortable, and Ibaka, and everyone's like, well, now they should have made a move, or they got no chance now. Maybe it's
once again it had no impact too.
Exactly.
Once again, it had no impact.
I mean, story of the year is that. They made the right decision there to stay to not waste these assets, and I know people are invariably going to be patient, and people will freak out again if they don't make if they say they strike out in free agency this summer, and they just all they do is draft and add little pieces. People will be like,
the number one overall pick in the draft, little piece.
I mean, yeah, I know. Well, no big deal, right? And I think they made the right decision there. I think they knew too. And maybe I'm not going to give them enough credit and say that they knew that even getting one of those guys probably wasn't going to be enough to get them over the hump. I think they still make the move if the price tag was reasonable to get one of those guys, and you see what happens. But I think they also had at least some idea in the back of their mind, no matter what, when they're thinking about, well, is this a good deal? Would we do this? Should we mortgage the farm? They said, I just don't think it's enough. The future is much brighter if we just hold on to these assets. We'll revisit this summer when price tags could be different, and there's still a chance to go do it without having to sacrifice assets. I thought they were very prudent in keeping the eye on the larger picture here, and I think that's tough for teams to do.
Yeah, this is not an off-season show, and I do want to save that for when we actually do specifically talk about the off-season, so I will kind of finish on this one shot. It's amazing how, fortunate they are in the non-moves that they have made since the Brooklyn deal and since that they've pretty much held on to the picks almost at all times, going all the way back to the Justice Winslow stuff and all that. It's amazing how fortunate that they have been in the non-trades that they have made. And be it had it been something like this year, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, or even the smaller moves like Serge Ibaka or P.J. Tucker, it ended up having zero impact whatsoever on the well-being of this team. And, of course, they maintain all that collateral moving forward. Duh! That is stating the obvious. Okay, let's go right to the playoffs. Before we even get to the playoffs, we're sticking with sort of our own personal mindsets and recalling what we were thinking going into the playoffs. The playoffs, sadly for me, is when I actually had to check out on the well-being and for the greater good of the network. But from a fan point of view, I was saying to myself, just win the first round playoff series. We're good. What did you? Was that what you were thinking? Just win in the first round.
But for sure, I thought especially when they went down 0-2, I said, "Wow, this is going to be a real bummer if they can't come back and win this." Because
I wrote it off.
Not only did they have such a good season, and they were really embracing that whole disrespect card with people before the playoffs saying that they were the worst number one seed in history. But obviously the Isaiah thing happens, and there's this natural weird vibe around the team, and no one knows how to respond. And you definitely, I don't know if we can ever simulate how things would have been different if he didn't go through that tragedy. But he did, and the way he responded to it, and the way the team rallied around him, and the KG voicemail and everything, it was really cool the way they won that first round series. And just like you said, going in, I think I would have said in my mind, just get through the first round, because if we saw it in that small glimpse when they went down 0-2, and everyone's sitting there going, Brad Stevens' coaching record is 2-12 or 2-14 in the playoffs. He has the worst winning percentage of any head coach, and maybe this guy just can't coach in the playoffs. And you sit there and kind of slap your head.
And he was getting out coached in the first two games. That was not a sports talk radio coach. He was not looking good in those first two. Come on.
I just think there were bigger things at play than the coaching in those first couple games. Like, okay, the whole Rondo thing too.
Right,
again, alternate world. Can we simulate?
And Robin Lopez is going nuts, and after they lost Game 2, I did a radio show out in Los Angeles, and I said there's absolutely no chance the Celtics can win this game. I felt like they literally had lost. It looked like a chessboard, and they had like a couple of pawns and a king, and they were just like marching their king along like a board, just trying to drag this out as long as and the Bulls had everything, and they could just sort of. I gave the Celtics 0% after Game 2. Before the Rondo, before the Rondo news, how did you feel after Game 2? Did you give them any shot?
I did. I again, and maybe I'm just trying to rewrite history there, but I do think that I was still confident because of everything going on around them. I felt like if they could get back to the focus on basketball with a 7-game series, with Brad able to kind of tinker, I felt like they would at least get themselves back into it. I will say. So the Rondo news definitely gave me even more confidence in that opinion. And then I remember swinging a little bit back the other way when Brad comes out before Game 3 and says we're going to go with Joe Green in the starting lineup. And I remember looking at the other guys and saying, this is a big moment in Brad's career, because this goes one of two ways. Either this is a
panic move.
Yep,
exactly.
A complete here I'm smarter than you. We're just going to do this. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on paper, but it's going to work. Or, it goes the opposite way, and they go out there and they get trounced, and then, the series is over, and everyone's questioning, wow, all right, his record was already bad, and now he can't even push the right buttons. Credit to Brad. I don't think there was any human being on earth who thought that Joe Green was going to be the secret weapon in that series.
I would have said you were bullish on Gerald all year.
But not that much.
Okay.
not. I thought
he was going to be the Nate Robinson, quote unquote, win a playoff game, and he did. I'll pat ourselves on the back. I even felt that way too. You far more so than me, that he was going to have his Nate Robinson moment or a Glenn McDonald moment there for our old time listeners. We got to give them their shout out.
I thought for sure it would be Jerebko in that situation. Oof. And I don't know if it would have been much different in how it played out. Like maybe they would have given the game the same sort of energy and scoring or whatever. But you know what? I say that, and then part of me sits there and says, Gerald just really had a good stretch there. Was he? I mean, he was terrible defensively, but he gave them the little lift offensively they needed, and especially I think there was both. Was it right out of the gates in Game 3 and Game 4? I think it was that he had a couple big 3-pointers, and you just felt like, wow, hey, they found something here, and opened up the floor, got cleared some space for them to work more inside. Gerald was a really good voice too. The guys just gravitated to him, whether it was just because he was so loose and goofy or whatever, but it gave him more of a presence and in that locker room. And I don't know. It was the right move at the right time. And I don't know if we simulated that series 100 times over again, it would have worked. But in that instance, it did. And good on Brad for figuring out the best way to get his team back into it. And once they got back into that series, I think I started saying,
okay, it was 2-2 back to Boston. It was I thought it was over for the Celtics when they were down 0-2. And then when they brought it 2-2 back to Boston, I was like, there's absolutely no chance they lose this series. I felt they were going to win it after Game 3, and Rondo was out for the year. That's how. So sadly, that was my mood swing with that series. It changed on a whim.
What was your feeling going into the Wizards series at that point then?
I actually did believe that they would beat Washington, but I also felt that if they didn't, they were playing with house money at that point. I felt like, listen, now it's honestly for me, it's all eyes on the draft lottery. I think a better question to ask is, first off, you thought they'd beat Washington, right? Real quick, yes or no?
I did.
I thought they were going to take them down too, and I did think they were going to need the full 7 games. But anyways, here's a question: how much did the Washington series change the perception of the team? I actually thought, once again, I want to save the offseason for another time. I thought with Utah beating the Clippers, getting to the second round themselves. I don't know. There's could be some player on Utah who is going to be discussed about certainly for the next 3 weeks or so. Actually, almost up till July 4th now. 4 weeks, excuse me. But they were in the second round as well. How much do you think them beating Washington and being one of the final 4 teams in the NBA changed the perception of the organization throughout the league?
First off, if you're going to spend a lot of time on a certain player from Utah, Jay Crowder is not going to listen to your podcast this summer.
Well, that's just one download. And if he's not using our coupon codes for our advertisers, we don't care about Jay Crowder here. Go ahead.
Wow. I do agree. I think if there's something to just the general notion that they were one of the final 4, one of the final 3, however you want to look at it, that
more games
the rest
in
of the
first
league,
place? More days in first place?
Well, but I think there's 26 teams at home watching, and guys who are going to be free agents, and they're sitting there watching their TV, and they see them, and they say, how close are they? If you get bounced to the second round, you're not one piece away. If you at least get to the finals, I think there's free agents out there who look at you and say, I can put that team over the top. You know how that team gets competitive with Cleveland? They draft the number 1 pick, and they add me. And I just think there is something to that getting through that second round just gave them that a little extra juice for free agents. Now, I don't think it's a huge swing. I still think there would have been people interested in how you play out. But as not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if you're a certain free agent and you're looking at your situation, you're saying, wow, the West looks pretty daunting. My team couldn't get out of the second round. I still got to go through the Spurs.
That's
and if Durant,
that's Durant, what I would tell other people who are good at basketball. That's what I would tell them.
And I would think, I'd look out east and I'd say, hey, that guy was pretty good with me the first time around and got me to a pretty good level. And, that'll be another contrived storyline that we'll spend way too much time on. But it'll be, I think that's a really good situation. And maybe LeBron will get bored or decide to go play minor league baseball for a little while. And the East will open up quicker than the West presumably will.
I hate to use this one. Matt Weiner brought it up here last week. I had to put him in his place when he used they might have been the least impressive number 1 seed in NBA history. And I said, well, hold on. They got that key Game 3 win again, so they did not get swept. There have been plenty of teams that have been swept in the conference finals. Also, the 2003 Pistons won 52 games. The Celtics team won 53. But wasn't it really bizarre all year that they had that very low point differential? I do not remember what they finished at. I remember it was like 3-6 or something.
Yes, it was something absurdly low for a 53 win team.
There was a lot of times. I remember I did a show with Coach Nick when they were out west in like February-ish or something like that, and they had just lost to Sacramento, and then they went into Portland the night before. I said, you know what, I think there could be a little bit of a regression of the means here. They have this really low point differential. I mean, I don't know how they keep doing it. Was there ever a point in time in the season where you just said, well, geez, this is kind of – they seem to be doing this with possibly smoke and mirrors, at least based analytically. Did you ever think that?
A little bit. I think, again, the early season hole they dug themselves in, and those you think about all those lopsided losses, like the normal differential was skewed, heavy on the negative side there early.
Blowouts though, and it was bizarre because the year before they had a ton and they could not win close games. Now this team was awesome at winning close games.
Well, but that's the other thing is like all their wins are by like 2 points, 3 points, 5 points, and all their losses were they didn't have that normal. I'm trying to think. I'm gonna pull up all the schedule now. Did they have? I felt like the signature for Brad's teams in those early years was always they'd be down 15 with
they come back and they cut it to 2 possessions and get
and so they'd lose by 3 points.
That was the other team not taking the Celtics seriously, by the way.
Right.
But anyway, go ahead.
So I don't think there was as many of those this year. And again, so maybe you had a couple more losses that weren't by that. So that skewed your differential a little bit. But yeah, in general, like listen, historically they were not supposed to be as good as they were. And we can debate the reasons for that or whatever, but ultimately, as the theme of the show, it didn't matter. It was they were still talented enough that when they were healthy, when they were together, they showed that they were better than their point differential suggested. And so it's a good reminder for future seasons that while that is typically an excellent predictor of success and how they'll do in the postseason, I think it was just a fluky thing.
Let's wrap on this. This is our season in review show. We did our Eastern Conference Finals review with Matt Weiner. So any deep delves into the Eastern Conference Finals, I highly suggest our listenership to go to episode number 211. But that Eastern Conference Finals, as you know, was certainly very forgettable in the grand scheme. Very few of us will look back and remember that series very fondly. I say very fondly. But I'll finish on this. How important was getting that Game 3 win and not going down in infamy as pretty much the worst conference finals in NBA history?
Yeah, I would
still
say
Spurs-Lakers 2001, which I don't recall you watching because you did bandwagon on the NBA a little later.
Right, exactly. Definitely. I will say it was pretty important. I do think there's something to, just as in the same vein of getting through that second round was important for the perception of like how close are they. I think we would have sat there in the aftermath of a sweep and said, wow, the gap is really pronounced, like that there's just no way to close, like that they have to do massive overhauls here in order to close the gap on the difference between the Cavs when they are engaged and the Celtics are where they are. And I don't know if that Game 3 changes it all that much. There's still a very large gap that they must close. But at least in those games 3 and 4, you saw the potential for them to be competitive. That for whatever reason, whether LeBron just decided to, challenge his teammates and figure out how to win this one without me, or if he was sick or whatever excuse you want to give it, the Celtics still went out there and they found a way to win that game, and you could just tell it meant so much to guys in those locker room. I think, especially with Al Horford, that emotional post-game interview with Abby where he's like screaming at the camera, and I just thought you could tell that they found something there that was really important to the mindset of how they move forward. And okay, you add a couple pieces, maybe you narrow that gap a little bit. There's still work to be done, but they can be competitive. I almost said we again. They can be competitive with this team.
Okay, it's okay.
And
gotta be true to yourself. That's from your mentor Bob Ryan, by the way.
I love him. I love that and that's a whole podcast on its own about fandom
Who says we on this show now when discussing? He is a first person with the Celtics now.
He's a we in general, though, right?
Yeah,
like
okay.
he's just. I mean, just saying. I feel like again that was important for the Celtics to get that game. I think it just gave you if they had gotten swept, I don't think it changes anything. I think people would have still been satisfied with the season. It gave you a little bit of a glimmer of hope about where they're at.
You're listening to CLNS Radio, home to the original Celtics podcast, Celtics Stuff Live.
And now the creme de la creme. You can't really delve into how they did it. They're ping pong balls after all. But I can still say that it was something that took me quite some time for that to sink in, even having to read a couple of recaps in the newspaper the next day. But winning the rights to the number 1 overall pick, Chris, I have no qualms admitting that I actually cried when they lost the Duncan lottery in 97. I was in the 5th grade after all. But even at 21 years old, it felt like I ate a bicycle after the Yoden Durant failure. The Celtics have never moved up in the draft lottery since 1986. We all know that. They didn't move up a few weeks ago. They just didn't move down, which is all that was needed. However, listen, I still am in some degree of disbelief that actually happened. And my only explanation for it, it's one of my favorites, and that being that much of life is predicated upon fortune, and fortune favors the virtuous and just.
I agree. I think even when it got announced, I sat there and was like, wait, this isn't how it's supposed to work. The ping pong balls are supposed to go the other way. You could see it with the Celtics team brass when they met with us on the floor after the game. It was like they were surprised. It was just this, as much as you can plan and anticipate. You know, this was maybe the one thing they couldn't anticipate, but I think it's a good thing for them that the ball has bounced the way they did, and I'm happy that they can finally. You know, nothing is at the mercy of someone else for a change, right? Like that they can. It's on them to make the right decisions from here, and you know what? They got to own it. Like they either got to find the right guy, or I just can't imagine they make a move. But I know that's for the summer. But I just think of all the things, of all the craziness that happened in this season, I agree. The ping pong balls cooperating is maybe the most awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping thing that occurred this season.
Now we can conclude ESPN's Chris Forsberg for our 2016-17 season review show. Now it's done. Follow the man on Twitter at ESPN Forsberg. Is that correct? I always get you and Goodman mixed up. Goodman's on the other end. It is ESPN Forsberg on Twitter.
That is correct. That is correct.
All right, let's.
And listen, we made it through the whole show, and I didn't call you out on Tyler Zeller.
Okay, well, you just did.
Oh,
you just did. You have a very nice summer. I'm sure we will speak the rest of the way. Just enjoy these next few weeks, too, before it gets really crazy, man. Music for this show was provided by Chuck Dietz and Steph Legrato, graphic designer Scott Dillon, CLNS CEO and founder Nick Gelso, and myself, the executive producer and host. I'm Larry H. Russell. See everyone next week for another edition of Celtics Beat, powered by the CLNS Media Network.